We're live, but not live.
No, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if you're listening, welcome to our podcast. My name is Mike. I'm sitting here with my friend Jeff.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Arnold.
Yeah, and we're here with our show, Our Retrollection.
But anyway, we both worked together and met him through another friend of mine that worked there that told me about him selling some PS2 games, and I was like, hey, give me the guy's name, I'll reach out to him. And so Mike introduced himself, and after that we just kind of like exchanged information, and I bought some PS2 games from him. We kind of stayed in touch since then. So
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, kind of lost contact for a little bit. And then I was selling some more games and forgot that you had purchased a huge lot from me before. And then you reached back out to me.
And I was like, send a message. I said, hey, you sell more stuff, man? And he's like, oh, yeah, well, are you interested? I'm like, yeah, definitely.
I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. And it's such a good system, too. I feel like there's so many collectors out there. And, you know, no problem if you are. There's some trust issues for sure with some of the collections that I see. But there's so many people out there that just won't work on price or payments or anything like that. And I feel like it's really sad because it keeps you from like making good, constant business.
Yeah, it does for sure. Because, you know, you find that someone that collects and is just as passionate as you are with the collecting, and then they can, you know, help you out by, you know, taking some money away. Hey, you want to, I'll give it to you for this. You know, it's kind of hard to find that nowadays. The collection has kind of saturated the market now because everybody wants to do it. And then they find something old, they automatically think it's going to be worth this amount of money, but technically it's not. It depends on what the circulation is, how rare the print of the game was, what system it was on, and stuff like that. So, you know, but there's games too that I collect that they're not worth anything, but they were a childhood memory for me because they were fun times of stuff that I can remember back then. It's nostalgic feeling. So I'm pretty sure you feel that way with some of your games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't actually really start collecting hardcore, I would say, until COVID hit. But then after that, I really went for it. My sales, you know, the sales in my blood, you know, ran through my veins. And I really just kind of felt like a kinship with collecting after that point.
It does bite you.
But I had a collection of just my games that I played regularly from when I was a kid. But I think for me, what was kind of weird is that when you own something that you have owned for a really long time, or like from when you played it as a kid, you don't really have the nostalgia memories of like, I want to play that again. It's more like I've just been kind of playing that my whole life.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I find myself still playing games like that I've owned, like Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, one of my favorite games of all time. Like, I'll still find myself like finding ways to find that game interesting to play it. And then I'll get a game like The Warriors for PS2 that I really enjoyed when I was a kid, but haven't played since I was a kid. And I'll play it and I'll get halfway through it and I'll be like, I'm good. I'm kind of done playing that one. And then I'll go back to Zelda or something that I've just had for a really long time.
I've been collecting since I was 13 years old. I'm now 44 years old, and
You're 44?
I'm 44.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I'm 44.
Oh man,
I'll be 45 this year. But my first gaming console that I ever played when little was my uncle had a Atari 2600 with a copy of Donkey Kong, and I remember him showing me how to play Donkey Kong, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I played it on a black and white CRT TV.
Oh my god!
And to turn the TV, it would take about 3 minutes for it to warm up to even bring a picture up. But you know, he would pop in. You'd have your one controller with the one button and the joystick, and he would show me how to play, and I learned how to play it. And then my first video game console that I had personally was a Nintendo Entertainment System. It came with Duck Hunt, Mario Brothers, and Track and Field, which was the at the time was it called a power pad, and you could lay it on the floor, and it had sensors in it to where you could put your feet and run like it would mimic your running on the screen. And it would sometimes work, sometimes not. When you're a kid, you find ways to kind of use it. So we, instead of using our feet, we would get on the floor with our hands and beat the little pads with our fists and make our guy run really fast. It was really kind of a cheat to it. So
right, yeah. But sometimes you got to find a way, you know.
But Mario Brothers really, I spent, oh my gosh, I must have spent at least 2 months playing Mario Brothers straight through, learn how to beat it. And then I wanted more games, and I think the other game that I fell in love with, I still play today on occasion, is the original Nintendo Ninja Gaiden that came out. And that game to me still holds to me as the hardest game I could ever play on the Nintendo, especially the last 2 levels. And I was determined to beat that game, and I finally did. But then I play through now, and I get like to the last 3 levels, and I'm like, I already beat this. I don't need to play it anymore. I'm done. You know,
right, yeah.
You know, it's like you know, I'm done with it. You know, and that was the fun. That was the one game that I felt that I conquered fully because I just played it all the time.
Right, and so like as a kid, you beat it.
Yes.
Okay. See, I feel like most NES games, I don't think I can think of one game that I actually beat when I was a kid.
Really?
I mean, I had to go back as an adult and beat. And which is interesting. And I don't know if it's because, you know, whether it was renting a game, which I kind of want to go back to that. My wife and I had a really good discussion about like Blockbuster last night, actually. But whether like renting a game and not having it for long enough to beat it and then not being interested enough to get it back, or you know, being a kid and having a break or losing it or, you know, whatever, like doing the whole thing where it would play for the first couple weeks and then after that it would just, you know, kind of play. So you're getting too frustrated. But yeah, I probably played the same 5 levels on Mario Bros. 3 and then just like gave up and restarted. And I don't even know if I attempted to beat any of those games. I just remember really liking a few of them.
Yes.
To the point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to play those 5 levels over.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you know, that game, playing it all the way through Mario Bros. 3, I mean, without using the whistles, it was kind of an achievement. And to me, it felt like achievement because, I mean, you had to go through one world and the second world, and each world had at least 5 to 7 maps on it. So you had to map, you know, compliments, man, and each world would get harder as you go.
Right.
You know, and I remember playing it through. The first time I ever saw it was on a movie called The Wizard, which was a classic for me growing up because it was based around a kid that was going across the states to play Nintendo games and stuff, and he got involved with playing into this tournament, and the game they revealed was something like, hey, we're going to give you guys something you guys have never played before. And it was a kind of a marketing scheme that Nintendo kind of marketed their games because it was Mario Bros. 3 everybody was ecstatic. So the kid played Mario Bros. And I was like, I want to get this when it comes out, and I finally got a copy of it, and it was really cool. My dad and mom went to the store and bought it for me and brought it home and then let me play it on the weekend. And that's all I did in that one weekend was play Mario Bros. 3. And I remember how much time I spent looking for stuff in that game. Mm-hmm. And when I found the whistles, I'm like, oh, well, I can just warp to something else. I don't have to go through it. So for the first few months I had that game, I didn't play each world sequentially. I would like go to the one and I was like, I want to go to World 7. You know, I'll go to World 7, do that map and everything. So one day I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to go through the game without using a whistle. I'm just going to play each map. And it was the most grueling hike I ever had to do for a Mario Bros. Game. And I did it within a weekend. It's so funny, but I started on a Saturday and I got halfway through and I left the game on and paused the game and turned the TV off to go to bed. And then the next morning, turned the TV back on and pick up right where I left off.
Right.
You know. And my mom was like, did that stay on all night? I'm like, yeah. She's like, why? I'm like, because I'm like halfway through it and I'm trying to get it. And she just kind of shook her head and walked out of the room. But, you know.
Was Mario 3 one that you couldn't save?
You couldn't save it. No.
I don't know why I didn't know that, but
yeah,
Interesting.
They didn't do the save function until Super came out, when they came out with Super Mario World.
Weird.
Because you would go to certain parts and it would ask if you want to save or
right.
save and quit.
Yeah.
But yeah, Super Mario Bros. 3.
Man, that'd be tough to.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's weird to think that. I mean, I guess it's not that weird to think about, but like just how games are now, where like people are upset when it's 20 hours or less of gameplay.
Yeah.
Where games used to be designed in like, okay, you're sitting down on the couch and you're trying to beat it in one go.
Yeah.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know why I never thought, but I'm thinking that Mario 3 is such an expansive game because, it took me years to finally see the ending, like the actual ending without any help or cheats or whatever. And yeah, that's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, there was only a handful of games on the Nintendo that actually did the save function that had a battery in it. One of the ones I played was Dragon Warrior. The first Dragon Warrior was on Nintendo. Mm-hmm. It had a save function on it.
Okay. And I know Zelda did.
Zelda did too. Yeah. And like Simon's Quest, it was a password save. So you would get a certain point in the game to where you would die, and you can copy the password down and make sure you wrote it down right, because if you didn't write anything down right on that password would not work.
Right, yeah, you're starting over.
So nowadays people can just use a screenshot with your phone and then, pull it up and see what it says. But back then, pen and paper, and you write down, hopefully you wrote the right thing down and put the password in and continue right where you left off.
Now, I wonder if, like, let's say you had a friend that had a password and you put that password into your copy of the game, is like the password system like specialized per copy?
I think it's just a code that kind of injects itself into the thing of your game, So I think if he got to a certain spot, like, hey, this is where I'm at now, and he gives you the exact same password, and you put that same password in your game, basically you're just injecting that code for that save.
I gotcha. Okay.
So, like, say if he, Castlevania 2, you had to get the body parts of Dracula. Right. So maybe he got the rib and the eye and whatever and the heart, and you're like, oh, I haven't got that far. He's like, here, you take this password, this will get you,
Right.
Then like, he'll have his whips bought and whatever items bought and everything, and then that progression will just continue where he left off.
Did you know in Castlevania 2, I'm familiar with the excruciating part of having to kneel for a tornado? Do you know what I'm talking about? Did you know how to do that, or is that something you had to look up? Or find in a magazine?
No, actually, Nintendo Power came out with a Castlevania 2 help guide, and there was some parts I was stuck at, and I didn't play for a while because I didn't know what to do.
Right.
You don't have no internet back then, so you just kind of have to go with what other people said. And the Power magazine showed you where you needed to be for the nil and everything. I'm like, oh, and then I progressed further. I'm like, oh, I'm making some progress now. I can finally beat this game. You know? Because, that stuff's this kind of stuff you just have to find out. There's no manual for it, so... kind of like, there was really nice with the Legend of Zelda, the very first game. It gave you a map of where all the original the dungeons were at.
Right.
But then when you did the second quest, you didn't know where everything was at because it changed everything. But that's, that's just how games were made. And I think that was just kind of the joy of, like, finding out new stuff about your game. You're like, oh, this is the playability is there,
So do you modern game? Or do you just like stick to classic?
No, I do some modern gaming. I'm kind of picky with that. Right now I've been playing a game called High on Life for PC.
Yes. Okay.
And
it's done by the games. Yeah.
It's done by Rick and Morty guys.
Yep.
And the dialogue in that game is hilarious. It's a first-person shooter, and I love first-person shooters, and it's just hilarious. It's a great game.
I played their other game that came out first. I can't remember what it's called at this point, but oh man, what was that? I keep wanting to say Morty, but it wasn't Morty. Man, it started out as VR, and then they kind of adapted it to controller play with kind of VR elements.
Right.
But anyway, I played that one, so gotcha. I'm excited to play High on Life. I just haven't. I've been ironically or coincidentally playing a game that has retro vibes to it, but is a modern game, and it's kind of comparable to Castlevania in
like
graphical sense.
Well,
and like it's a top down called Bullet Heaven. So Bullet Hell is when you like are fighting a bunch of monsters that are shooting a bunch of stuff at you, and then like you're avoiding. But I guess Bullet Heaven is when you're the one that's shooting everything, and all these monsters are like
that
just
sounds pretty incredible.
coming after you. And I got it. I think it was like $5. I think it's still $5 on Steam.
Yeah.
And just it is the new hotness on my Steam right now. I've been playing that. It's got great music. And it's all controlled with just the left thumbstick. So everything auto shoots and everything and like locks on enemies. And so you think you're like, man, I'm only using one button, but like the unlock system, the character choices, the items that you can get, and then you can like meld together to make better or whatever. Right. There's like synergies you can do. And I have been addicted to it. It's called Vampire Survivor.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's super, super good. And it's got the style of Castlevania. Oh, sorry. Do you need to move your foot?
No, I'm good, but
you're good?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good. Okay.
There we go. But it's got the style of Castlevania, the music like Castlevania, but it's like a modern kind of top-down shooter. Gotcha. But very fantasy driven and everything like that. And it's it's just, I think the last time I got addicted to a game like this was Stardew Valley, which is another kind of like 16-bit, right. Or not 16-bit, but
I think the indie game scene for like Nintendo or PC and stuff, it's huge market now.
It really is. And honestly, I think it's because, I mean, I was having this discussion. I'm going to ask you the same question about how you feel about AAA games, like being, I don't want to say, like being $60 for kind of an unfinished game, and then allowing the game to be updated like as it goes on. I feel like it's good in the sense of like one of my favorite games I play on the PC is 7 Days to Die, which if you don't know is a zombie survival game that's been around since like 2013. But they've updated the game so much that it like, it used to look like a 2013 game, but now it looks like a 2022 game. And so that is good, but also I wonder if they'll ever actually just release the game because it's still an alpha. And so, so it's like you spent this money on a game that's not finished and they've been working on for 10 years now. And it's still not finished. So you have a lot of great content, but then I feel like they're kind of changing things that I really liked about the game. And you're like, oh no, like, is that going to be in the final product now?
Right.
So it's got its highs and lows, but for the indie field, I'm paying $5 for a game that I'm getting 40, 50, 60 hours in and still having a really good time.
One of my favorite indie games on there is Hollow Knight. I don't know if you ever played that one.
I haven't played it yet, but it's on my list.
It's definitely one that I've enjoyed since I downloaded it. And it's been really, and they've got a part 2 already. It's one of the few games that's kind of like, I can't really describe the gameplay. It's a throwback to like Ninja Gaiden mixed with Zelda, mixed with Metroid as it goes through. The progress can get kind of difficult as you go through, but this kind of a cool story, and you get in a whole complete game, and the money you spend on it is well worth it to me.
Okay.
And so it's just, I think just the indie side, and the people that do the indie games, and kudos to them, because I think a lot of them are I was just taking time. Probably passionate about their old gameplays. And so I know a lot of them are probably retro game players that probably remember spending Saturday morning, getting their bowl of cereal, watching cartoons, and then jumping on their favorite system.
Right.
Either it's Sega, Nintendo, and then get on there and playing their games. It's just, I remember that. I remember waking up and playing Nintendo in the morning, getting after I had my bowl of Fruity Pebbles, watch some Ninja Turtles, and then jump on my games,
Yes, yeah. And I think, I mean, even though there's a gap in our age, which I got to be honest, I really didn't think that there was, that big of a gap. I would have guessed like 35 maybe. So
wow,
you're doing
thank you
well
so
for
much.
yourself.
Well, I appreciate
You're
that.
doing well for yourself there, Jeff.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's a shame for me to see, which I know it's a different experience and you don't know what you've missed because you haven't lived it, whatever, that whole spiel. But it's a shame for me to see the end of the era of kids that grew up with like the most basic of gaming to like what we have now and got to experience the full spectrum.
Oh yeah.
And still have years to experience what's coming out in the next gen. Because I feel like younger kids that are playing games now are used to like, okay, well, when I was born, the Xbox One came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, like you don't even like you could play older games because you heard about them, but you can't really experience the game.
Right.
And so I think the indie market has just been like from people that are like 25 or from like 30 to 45, like we got them, you know, like we got them in the palm of our hand, which is great because they've been
it's a good market.
So it's a
very
great
good
market.
Yeah.
But like I remember when I was a kid playing Nintendo, like you didn't talk about it at school unless you talked about it to a kid that was your age.
Exactly.
Because you didn't talk to older kids because they're like, oh, you know, you're a loser or whatever.
Yeah.
You're a geek, you're a nerd. But now I can talk about playing Nintendo with people that are in their 30s and 40s, and they're like, "Oh
because,
man,
You know, and on top of that, it was a flavor for everybody. Nintendo, you know, everybody had a little bit of everything. I was big into wrestling games. I loved WWF wrestling growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the old Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and I grew up with the Undertaker. And when they would start releasing those on the Nintendo, I was excited. So one of my first wrestling games that I played on an old console was the WrestleMania Challenge.
Okay.
And it had theme music for all the guys. You had the rings that you could do, basically a character that was basically yourself that you could run through and then tag team, whatever. But it had like the trademark moves. And it was very basic. It had like you had your punch, you had your kick, and then you had your throws, and then everybody had a special move. You hit the combination B and A, and it would do their special move.
Right.
But I was like, this is cool, you know. I'm a Big Boss Man. You got Big Boss Man's music playing, and you see your character on screen. It's Big Boss Man, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Or Andre the Giant, back when Andre the Giant was still wrestling, because you know he was one of my favorite wrestlers too. But you know, seeing that revolutionize wrestling games now, it's just like it's so far beyond what I would imagine now. You know, seeing that back then to now.
Right.
You know,
do you enjoy modern wrestling games?
I do some of the most modern day wrestling games. Yeah,
okay.
I do. I think the 2K series is really good.
Okay, yeah,
I like.
I've heard great things and I've heard horror stories.
Yeah, there's some bad ones.
You know, and so it's kind of interesting to me too. I think of any sports game, not just wrestling. It's amazing to me that they release one every year.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, how much as it could have... Like, I love hockey, and one of my favorite games on Xbox to play, because I hardly ever play Xbox, but you can't get it on Steam, is NHL, 21, 22, whatever. So I will turn on my Xbox for the sole purpose of playing that. But it's like, why did I buy... it's literally the same game.
With different people's names.
Barely any different graphics or what changes, but somehow I got hooked and I end up spending.
It's kind of gone the way Madden games have come out now. It's just like you're playing with a different roster, but the same game mechanics is still in there like that, you know.
Right.
And like you said, hockey for me, one of my favorite ones is the Sega Genesis, the NHL '94, and '94 is still one of my favorite hockey games of all time. Right.
Yeah.
You know?
I owned NHL '94 for like 2 days. There was somebody that was selling a Dreamcast, and I've never owned a Dreamcast, and I was really excited about it. And so I went and I got it, and then and you know this.
Yeah.
I'm not just tooting my own horn here, but I believe in good collecting karma. Right?
Yep.
And it was like a day after I bought it. It was a steal. Great deal. Pretty good list of games on it. And I was playing everything and just like amazed by the graphics. I'd never even played a Dreamcast before, so I was excited to have it in my collection. I'd never seen anyone play a Dreamcast before.
Gotcha.
So I didn't realize the caliber that I was dealing with, because all I ever heard was that it killed Sega pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it can't be that good, but man, it was amazing. But it was the next day, someone at our work came up and just offhand, just because he was talking about how he was like, man, I have just been looking for a Dreamcast for years. He's like, my kids talk about us gaming together and I just want to play Dreamcast with my kids because I grew up with it. And like 2 of the games he was looking for came in the bundle that I got. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I will just sell it to you for what I got it as like a trade. But I was also bummed. Like, he loved it, and he's still enjoying it to this day.
That's good.
And so it's like that good collecting karma. Yeah, I was like, okay, the stars aligned, and this happened for a reason, and I can help out, and I can assist. And I think that this is going to help me get better deals in the future, or he's going to see something and be like, oh, Mike helped me out, I'll help him out, sort of thing.
But, they got that good karma just kind of follows you, because if you did that, something might come around that you might find something that you really want, and it's like, oh, you want this? Well, I'll cut you a deal. Here you go, Right. And you got something personally.
It was shortly after that I met you, Jeff. So I think that was the good karma. I think that's what the good karma was, is that you and I feel like work so well. And because when it comes to collecting for me, you and I have talked about this, personally, but when it comes to collecting for me, it's less about what I'm buying unless I'm very interested, like a Zelda game or something weird like an N64 collectible or something like that.
Right.
And it's more about the sale. Like I can't think, there's only 2 games that I can think of in my collection that I spent what it's worth now for prices, which is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door was one of them, just because I had to own it and I could not find it anywhere. I've been looking for years. And then the other was one of the N64s that I bought, the Fantastic ones. I think it was the Ice Blue I bought for like $300 or something. Wow. I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to pull the trigger. It's there. I'm just going to get it. Yeah, I'm just going to do it.
I feel it. Yeah.
And so those are the 2 things that I can think, but everything else in my collection, which is a good couple hundred games, or even things that I have owned that I've sold probably in the 500-600, amount in that area of like items, I've gotten from garage sales, or somebody being like, I have a trash bag full of games, just give me $20. You know what I mean? Like very fortunate to get it. And so then you come along and you're able to like go to cons, and you have booths, and you clean games, and you mod things, and you're also interested in collecting. But then you and I have this connection. Like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I can still go to garage sales, get games for cheap, but then I can also sell them for cheap. And then you can sell them for a little bit more, and then like everybody can kind of make their money back, and just spread games around. And like for me, the worst part is when people are like, "Oh, I threw it out." Yeah, and it's like, "Oh, dude,
don't throw it away. Don't throw it. I would have bought it from you."
What's up, dudes? Thanks for listening to Our Retrollection podcast. I just wanted to hop in here for a quick second to talk about different ways that you can reach out to us. We have our podcast email, which is retrollectionpod@gmail.com. That's retrollectionpod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Discord and Facebook under Our Retrollection. Just want to give a shout out to my good buddy Colin that made all the music for this podcast. Thanks again, Colin. Last, I'd just like to plug my wife's new podcast, which is called On Wednesdays We Read Smut. This is the normalization of a very popular but not well talked about genre of books, also known as spicy books. It's like a virtual book club that meets every other week to talk about a new book in a series. She has her first episode out now, and you can find it on all major streaming services. Now let's get back to the show, shall we?
So I have a buddy of mine that said, hey, this guy's selling he's getting rid of his inventory. He had an EB game store. I'm like, cool. And he said, oh, he has some Dreamcast stuff. I'm like, yeah, I really want to go see what he has. So I went over there. It was like on a weekend. He had his garage door up, and he was trying to get trash out of there. He had an old Dreamcast kiosk with the TV and the whole thing with the controllers and the console in it. And he was wanting to get rid of it. He didn't want to haul it off. And I was like, oh, my stupid self said, I'll take what's inside of it. I don't care about the kiosk.
No.
So I did take the Dreamcast kiosk. I took the controllers. And there was a not for resale version of Power Stone in this. It was a demo disc that was actually the full game.
Right.
That had no case. And it said that you had to get rid of it within a month. He never threw it away.
Right.
So I still have it. I still have that Dreamcast. But I told him he just hauled that kiosk off. So here it is. And here a couple of years ago, someone was talking about it. I'm like, you know what? Why did I not even take that? I should have found a way to take that kiosk home. I could have shot myself because I think I would have had a really nice setup. And even if I didn't keep it, I could have maybe put a Dreamcast in it, set it up, and then sold it for somebody that wanted it for their collection. I'm like, you know what? why did I do this? So now, from now on, if I find something that I know that could be worth something for somebody else, maybe I'll keep it, and then I'll sell for somebody that wants it really bad.
I think that's I feel like I do the same currently now, like with our our little arrangement.
Yeah.
But it's interesting being, which I'll talk about in the next or another episode, but being married and being a collector, but also being married and not being a hoarder.
Right. so I'm in the same boat as you are, so that's kind of like, we can discuss that down the line.
My wife is amazing.
Mine is too.
She has her limits with things, and sometimes when I'm like, okay, I'm bringing something home.
Right.
But I'm going to give it to Jeb. You know what I mean? I was like, so it'll only be on the couch for a couple days. She is a saint when it comes to like the balance of letting me have. I don't know if you even noticed the CO2 that I had down here. But it's kind of like she gave me a couple corners of the house and was like, okay, you can fill that shelf, and then you can fill this shelf in this corner of the house. But if it exceeds over that, like you got to start kind of.
Yeah.
And I will say that my current, like, I don't know, I kind of went from hardcore N64 collecting, like strictly only N64 collecting to try to get the full, like, loose North American release.
Right.
To somebody just being, a deal that I just couldn't pass up.
Right.
Like I have a Game Boy with 6 games for $5. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to have that. Or like, okay, I have a crate of PS2 games. I don't know what's in there and what works. $15, and like you can't check anything here, but you bring it home. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, even if not a single one worked, it's like the experience of just having a. So then somehow I got into collecting for everything. And I was like, this is too confusing and too much. I need to go focus back on N64 stuff. And then it kind of like now it's landed on like Nintendo. So now I kind of exclusively collect for Nintendo, and then everything that I'm not really interested in, or more than anything I know that I won't play, I'm happy to get rid of.
Right.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I know we had talked about bringing something in that we.
Yes.
If you want to start off.
Well, I thought we could do just a little segment called the Collector's Corner.
Okay.
Not very original, but I saw it in a Nintendo Power magazine.
Okay.
Which, also, I got the name for our podcast by reading through a Nintendo Power magazine. So, anyway, but I'll start out, and this one's not like super crazy or rare or anything like that, but one of my favorite games of all time, Mega Man 64.
Oh.
Which this is my original copy from when I was a kid. And it may or may not have been stolen from a Blockbuster.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I know there was one game in my collection that I wouldn't give up. And then I heard that Blockbuster was going out of business. And so I was like, I don't think they'll notice. So I just held on. And I'm pretty sure it was this one, but I can't be certain.
Gotcha.
But I honestly am not a huge fan of any other Mega Man game. I like Mega Man games.
Right.
But it's too hard. Like
Did you not play the original Nintendo ones at all?
I did. I really enjoyed 2.
Okay.
I mean, I think
a lot. I think really
2
good.
is like
2 is really good.
Like 1 was great, but like 2 they hit it. Like they hit really well. And then I tried like Mega Man X and Mega Man on like Game Boy Advance and stuff. And I enjoyed it. Which is weird because I also like side-scrolling adventure games, but something about it that I was like, it was too difficult for me to like really have a good time, and I felt myself more just grinding.
Right.
But with 64, I remember it came out, and the reason why I picked it up was not because it was called Mega Man, but I always thought that Mega Man on the cover kind of looked like Gohan from Dragon Ball Z.
Right, I can see that.
And I was huge into Gohan, like into Dragon Ball Z at the time.
Right.
And so I was like fanboying, and I was like, oh my God, like he looks like Gohan. Like this is great. Like Gohan's my favorite character.
You're right.
And like I just kind of want to play a game where he
like he's the main character.
Yeah, he's the main character. And so I remember playing it, and I just fell in love with the story, the gameplay, and I gotta get into it a little bit. I think it's a shame because they came out with Mega Man Legends 2.
Yeah.
And then they had kind of like an offshoot but they were gonna make a third one, and then the company went like Capcom didn't go under, but Capcom basically was like, we're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And so the second one ended on a cliffhanger, and it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart to this day, and I still hold out hope because I've heard rumors every so often that they're still kind of working on it in the dark, but I don't know. I hope they release another one, but I feel like, which also soon I'll be doing a stream on this on my channel, Better with Sound. So look out for that. Just a shameless plug. But I feel like the gameplay, the music, and the fact that there's so many things you could do if you feel like it, but you couldn't do. I think my favorite thing about the game is that depending on if you help do the sideline stuff for the characters in the game, like if buildings get destroyed and you help pay to get them rebuilt, by the end of the game, those characters are like praising you. But if you don't do that, they're just kind of like, please leave. You know what I mean? So like, but like, it doesn't affect gameplay at all. It's just like a little bonus human interaction.
Kind of gets you a little bit of like a fame in the game. Because you're like, oh, this guy's really stood up. You know, he got it. Help us get our city rebuilt and everything. You know? And you could go up to doors and like listen in on conversations. And if you're like bad in the game, people will be like, you know, kid will be like, oh, like I saw Mega Man out on the street, and the dad will be like, you know, stay away from him. He's a horrible person. Blah, 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 blah. But then if you do good, it's like, hey, like really look up to that guy. It's kind of like the Spider-Man with J. Jonah Jameson always trying to discredit Spider-Man with his way, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, I brought that one down as just one of my favorites.
That's cool.
Yeah. So,
awesome.
All right.
So my game I brought in today was called a game shooter called Einhander. It's made by Squaresoft. It was for the PlayStation 1. First time I ever played this was on a demo disc, and it was the first time I ever played a shooter game from Squaresoft that actually was really good.
That's interesting.
It's a 3D side scroller. You had ships that when you picked your ship, they can hold gun pods, so you can pick up other guns from other enemies, and you can use the weapons that you pick up. The level design was awesome. I love the music, and it was one of the very first PlayStation games I actually bought with my PlayStation 1, and I end up really liking it.
You gotta love the advertisements they have.
Yeah, the advertisements in those. Now, some of the Squaresoft games actually had demo disc of like future titles being run, and those discs come in some of the retail games.
That's crazy. When I think of Squaresoft, I think of like Final Fantasy,
right?
And like I don't think of like a scrolling shooter.
Yeah,
but that's awesome. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Armored Core.
Yep.
Have you ever played that?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, just the kind of, not the graphics, I guess, but like the effect of like picking up guns and putting them in.
It was really cool. The music is really cool. The level design is really neat, and then the actual ships and stuff. As you pick up, some of the weapons that you pick up can be really powerful for like, and you get bonus points for like taking out bosses really quick too. So
nice.
So sometimes you can pick up a gun pod that's actually they're weak against. If you get that gun pod and kill them with that, you get bonus points.
Oh, nice. So it's kind of like a Mega Man in that aspect.
A little bit, yeah.
Get stuff like that they're weak against.
It gets challenging. It is the screen, the flight's not completely side scrolling. You can go up and down too, vertical and horizontal. So then you had like stuff that would fly after you from the sceneries and stuff, and it was one of the coolest shooters I ever played. I know there's a lot of other ones out there like Raiden and stuff that's like the top down, but that was the very first side scrolling one I ever played by Squaresoft, and I ended up just keeping it. Couldn't get rid of it because I liked the gameplay.
Yeah, so. Was it Squaresoft first and now it's Square Enix?
Yeah, Square Enix, yes.
Okay, do you know why they changed?
I think they ended up like combining another company because Enix used to be just by themselves.
Oh, okay.
And Enix were the people that made the Dragon Warrior games.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so they kind of when they combine, they kind of like merged the property. Yeah. So
yeah, dude, that's awesome.
So so that's
what was like your first console that was like your own? Like you didn't share with anybody. It was like, or you didn't have like a friend that you borrowed from.
I would have to say my PlayStation 1. My very first gray PS1 I bought the DualShock version, and I just kept it because they had Gran Turismo coming out at the time, and I wanted a driving game, and I bought the DualShock version.
I did. We were a PlayStation and N64 family, you know. And I had the N64. My brother had the PlayStation, but we'd swap every so often and play. But I played a lot of Test Drive. Test Drive 5, I think, was the one I played the most on PlayStation.
Right.
But I played Test Drive, Driver 2.
Driver 2 is good.
And then, there was one other on the PS1 that I played.
Twisted Metal was actually really good.
Twisted Metal. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
Man, whatever happened to Twisted Metal? I loved that series.
I don't know what happened to the company. I think they were owned by Sony Company, and they just released it. And I think the last variation I saw was it was on PS2. I think it had.
Oh, okay.
I think it was one of the ones they released, and they actually had online play. It was very first Twisted Metal game had online play, and after that, I don't know if they've come out with it anymore. I haven't seen none in the market. But that one was kind of a staple through the PlayStation's history too. I think there's
right. I think they were going to come out with like a TV show or a movie.
There was something planned for that and everything. I think the last one that I saw was Twisted Metal Black was the last one they made. Now, I could be mistaken.
I actually really liked Twisted Metal Black. But I remember my mom walking in one time when I was playing it, and she was mortified because I was, 7th, 8th grade, maybe at that point.
Yep.
And she walked in and, seeing people do horrible things to themselves in that game.
Yeah.
On like the movie cut scenes or whatever.
Right.
And some of those still stick with me to this day.
It was an adult game. Adult game.
And something too, when you were talking about the earlier, when you were talking about the demo disc that you had that was, like for display only or whatever. It reminded me of the PlayStation discs that you could get that had the demos on them.
Yep. It was a PlayStation Underground disc.
Yes, PlayStation Underground. And I had a recent memory unlock like 3 or 4 days ago of a game called Parasite Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that didn't have gameplay, but they had like the intro movie you could watch for it or something. And that terrified me as a kid. I remember I would when I would get to it, because I think there was a hockey demo underneath it. And so I would skip it real fast so that it didn't even play the first couple seconds of it, because I was just that thing scared me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I actually have those for PlayStation, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So they were actually really, to me, they're really good games and stuff like that. It was like that for me. So you're terrified. So the first Resident Evil game I played was our RE2 for PlayStation.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was terrifying for me when I first played it. And I was like, this game's scary. And then I played through and I beat it. And I was like, this is good. So, and then a couple years later, 3 came out. And 3 was, to me, revolutionized survival horror, because the fact that you could play through and your main enemy would just show up out of nowhere and come after you.
Right.
So Nemesis would just come through the door with a rocket launcher, and you're like, you get this panic feeling like, what I got to do? Turn around and run.
You're constantly being chased.
Yeah, and you're trying to run away from him because you know that you're not going to be able to fight him. It's like, my weapons are not strong enough to take him down. He's got a rocket launcher. He's going to blow me up.
Right, yeah.
You're trying to run through doors, and he runs through the doors, and he's just chasing you. And that game to me, when I first played it, I played it on a rainy night. It scared the bejesus out of me.
Right, yeah. I actually a little bit of a weenie when it comes to horror games. I can't play too many, and which is weird because I don't mind scary movies. I don't get scared by very many things. But something about horror games, I don't know what it is, but I'm because I remember playing Resident Evil 5, but I could never play it by myself. Even that game, which is pretty tame in the Resident Evil series.
It is pretty tame, yeah.
I didn't want to play it by myself, so I always had to play it with a friend. So I don't think I've ever played that game not co-op before. But then my buddy was raving when Resident Evil 7 came out. He played it, obviously it's a solo game. And he was like, man, you got to get it. It's back to its roots. It's so good. And he was talking about all this stuff. And I was like, dude, honestly, I wish I could, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Even with 7 Days to Die, which I play, I'll play that one by myself sometimes. Yep. It's more fun with a friend, but I'll play it by myself sometimes. But sometimes I get really creeped out.
I have never finished Alien Isolation. Just the fact that you have an alien chasing you down through the whole thing, and you have to find places to hide.
Yes,
I couldn't
I've
do
seen
it.
that. Yeah,
I could not do it. I got halfway through, and I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
It's so weird how that, I don't know, because horror. I mean, I think maybe because I'm also a huge film buff.
Yeah.
So when it comes to horror movies, I'm more just kind of like picking it apart. So I'm like, that would never happen, or this is stupid, or I don't like that, or whatever, or I don't like the direction they took with this, or I don't like how they shot this part. But when it comes to like horror games, I think I just like, when it comes to movies, it's hard for me to sit down and enjoy a movie. I have to like constantly critique it. When it comes to a video game, I don't critique anything. I just play the game. You know what I mean? I'm like, because for me, I'm like, even though it's just a movie, it has to have some sort of real life logic to it.
Exactly.
But when it's a video game, I'm like, that's a video game. Like, who cares if like 10 puppets pop out of a thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, obviously that would happen. It's a video game world.
Yeah.
Even if it's set in like New York City or something, like some place that exists. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a dude like swinging around on webs in New York City in tights. Like, yeah, sure, it's a video game.
So one of the most scariest games I actually played that I didn't think I would sit through, but I actually did, and I beat the whole thing, was the original Dead Space.
Yes,
the one by Visceral Studios. Before it's now being remade. It's being re-released.
Is it? Oh, is
it?
Yeah,
it's coming out this month. Actually, it's coming out at the end of the month. So
I thought it was a continuation. I didn't realize it was.
There was a remake of the first one being done. But I played it, and it was something that I was like, oh, this is space zombies. This is totally different from Resident Evil.
Right.
And that game was terrifying. I had to play 45 minutes at a time. Mm-hmm. And then when I have something pop out at me, I have to stop because I'd be so tense and shaking.
Right, yeah.
And come back and try to pick it back up. I made myself do it, and I actually beat it, but it was a different game for me. And that, to me, was like the scariest game I've ever played.
I remember I watched somebody play through Dead Space, like a walkthrough kind of. Or it was like a YouTuber or something that played through it, and I really enjoyed watching someone play through it because I knew I was like, I'll never be able to play. I was like, I could have all the lights on and like 2 people in the house with me, and I'd still be like, no. I'm not vibing with that.
It was a way. I think it was ahead of its time with the survival horror. It hit its mark, I think, pretty well.
Which is crazy because I love survival horror. Like I love, like zombies are a huge point, of my life. I love zombie films. I love zombie games.
Yep.
I have no problems, with that. But something about the isolation is terrifying.
It is. That's what terrified me.
Yeah, and like something like Left 4 Dead is like kind of arcadey, in a way. So it's like it's not scary to me, but something like Dead Space is just like, oh man, that's creepy.
Yeah, because you're like one engineering guy that you had to like survive on making weapons and getting ammo and stuff, but then these necromorphs would just pop out of nowhere and come grab you,
Right, yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're stomping on them, trying to shoot them apart because, shoot them in the head is not going to kill them. You're going to have to cut their limbs off so they can die. You know? So it's very one of those things where it's psychologically played on you because, they knew what they're going to come out and do, Right. And there's so many different variation ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something different.
I don't know. But maybe, you know what? Maybe we should live stream a horror game.
That'd be kind of cool.
That would be cool. I think if you were here, I'd be okay.
I know I'd be tense. I know I'd be tense. I know I'd be tense, but I would play.
Yeah, you know what? I think we could do it. But but honestly, we've been going for a minute. I think we can wrap this one up.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. You know? Well, it's been nice talking to you and getting to know more about collecting and stuff. And we're more than welcome to give us some feedback. Let us know what y'all think. If there's certain topics you would like to hear more about, let us know. I'd be more than happy to talk about it.
Yeah, and I don't think I referenced this at the beginning, like at the very beginning, but we're both the hosts, so it's not like this was my show and he's a guest or vice versa. I was like, so we'll be on every week, but we're hoping to add like a person that's a fellow collector or a movie buff or gaming news or whatever. So if you know us personally and that's something you'd be interested in, reach out.
Hey, reach out.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to have you on the show. I think we're planning on doing some live streaming with some of our shows, and we're kind of wanting to build this up, and it's more of a passion for me and him to kind of talk about this stuff. And we hit it off pretty well, and we just kind of threw this idea. I was like, hey, let's do a podcast, and he's like, yeah, it sounds great. Let's do it. And we just kind of worked it up, and then here we are. And
which, if my wife was here, she could tell you how excited I've been. She's like, I feel like you're like a giddy schoolboy. I was like, I'm just so excited to like talk about gaming and hang out and like and talk to just other people that are interested in the
definitely.
So I appreciate everybody listening in. And again, I'm Mike, and
my name's Jeffrey, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or anything. You just give us some feedback and let us know.
Yeah, we'll put everything. I'll list everything at some point in the episode. So now you're hearing what I will in the future record and put in like the middle. So that's where you can reach out to us, like on our email, or we have a Discord. We'll have things up on YouTube. It'll be everywhere. So. Yeah, I think that's good for the first one.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, brother. Sounds good.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, until next time. Later.